Let's bring in former federal prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky. Mr. Cherkasky, it's obviously pretty difficult to tell what was going on there. But when you're dealing with a suspect who is armed, authorities, law enforcement officers don't have a whole lot of time to make judgment calls.
Well, based on the reports that we're hearing, the videos that we see, this appears to be essentially a suicide by cop type of scenario. It's long been known. If you are going to fight with cops and resist in situations that are escalating like this, it is a death wish. And it is really unfortunate that people have kind of taken on this idea that even if they disagree with the laws as it relates to immigration in our country, or even the enforcement of it, to put themselves in such dangerous situations where people around them, even if it's not them, are aggressing against law enforcement, are in the way of law enforcement engaged in legitimate operations that have gone through all of the court systems and been blessed. What is happening is perfectly lawful on behalf of the Trump administration and the officers who are on the ground. And these folks who are putting themselves in their way are putting themselves in grave danger.
The president himself has come out and said that, these protests are way beyond the pale. Local authorities, the governor and the mayor in Minneapolis, are demanding that federal authorities get out of their state and their city. Should they?
Well, certainly not. We live in a federal constitutional system in which the federal government has to be able to engage in the enforcement of federal laws, whether those are criminal laws or whether they're civil laws, whether it deals with immigration or otherwise. The federal government, if stopped by states from enforcing those laws, is in a chaotic situation that simply would not be able to stand. And each state then choosing from one administration to the next what laws they're going to allow the federal government to enforce or not enforce. It's a recipe for an absolute disaster. And so when we look at what the state legislators and the public officials are doing in Minneapolis in standing in the way in this regard, it is exactly contradictory to what we need to be doing in a country in which it's the politicians who are elected by the people who enact the laws and the executive branch who enforces it. And these folks, I pray that they stay safe and stop with the dangerous situation that they are causing.
The folks at ICE say that, it's local authorities who are ramping up the trouble here because of these protests and the doxing of agents, the social media alerts about agent actions. Instead of sending, say, 5 people to try to apprehend one of these suspects, they're having to send 15 because they need 10 people to handle crowd control and just protect the agents who are trying to do their work.
Right. I think that there's a very important conversation that's being had, and it's the Insurrection Act. What does it take for the president to utilize that tool to make sure that state agencies who are supposed to be protecting the public safety are doing so? And if they're not, the federal government has more tools at its disposal to ensure that it's able to do so. And so we come back again to what the local officials are doing to create wildly dangerous situations, whether it's through the reckless speech of the politicians, whether it's through law enforcement not responding to areas in which there are uprisings and violence occurring against federal officers, or any other number of really quite ridiculous reasons for them to have allowed this to get this far out of control. It has to stop.
Well, the Insurrection Act would be a serious step. Based on what you've seen so far, do you think it's time that the president invokes that, or take a wait and see approach?
Well, I think there's certainly grounds to do it. The baseline in terms of establishing the good faith of the president in believing that that's necessary to stop this type of violence that we're seeing day after day in numbers by the thousands against these ICE officers without the help of state and local officials. The legal basis, I believe, has been established. Whether that's a good idea politically, that's for President Trump, who is a brilliant political mastermind and knows, I think, better than any president we've seen probably in the history be able to deal with just the most difficult situations. And I think that decision of utilizing the Insurrection Act is just a deeply political decision that President Trump is the one entrusted to make.
Former federal prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky, thanks very much.